Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. Each week, we interview the best and brightest in physical therapy, wellness, and entrepreneurship. We give you cutting-edge information you need to live your best life, healthy, wealthy, and smart. The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Karen Litzy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Karen Litzy, and today's episode is brought to you by Net Health. So Net Health has a purpose-built EMR software and solutions for outpatient care. Net Health exists to invigorate provider experience, facility performance, patient care, and outcomes in 5 specialized medical settings: rehab therapy, employee health, occupational medicine, urgent care, and wound care. And they have an online rehab therapy community designed for the intersection of clinical and business sides of rehab. It's the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forums. It's all about habits and initiatives to juice up your attendance, revenue, workflows, documentation, compliance, efficiency, and engagements. There are write-ups, white papers from leading-edge performers. There are polls, surveys, benchmarking, calculators, videos, podcasts, and more. So to check out the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forum, go to www.nethealth.com/healthy. So a huge thanks to Net Health for sponsoring today's episode. And my guest today is Dr. Lynn Steffes. So I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lynn at the Private Practice Section annual meeting in Orlando, Florida a few weeks ago. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Lynn, she is the president and consultant of Steffes Associates, a rehabilitation consulting service based in Wisconsin. She provides consulting services to rehab providers nationwide. She's a 1981 graduate of Northwestern University. She is a network administrator for a group of 50-plus private practice clinics, where her primary responsibilities include marketing, payer and provider relations, and contract management. She currently serves as a statewide reimbursement specialist for the Wisconsin and Florida Physical Therapy Associations. She also works as an adjunct faculty member in the physical therapy program at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse Physical Therapy Program, teaching professional, referral relations, marketing, and peer review. She is very active in the APTA and the private practice section, and I was so excited to be able to have the chance to sit down with Lynn to talk about her journey as a physical therapist, going from working physical therapist, treating patients, to being a consultant. So I know a lot of people in the healthcare world, perhaps one day, may be thinking, I don't know if I want to be full-time treating patients, but maybe a consulting role might be in my future. And if that's the case, today is the episode to listen to. So we talk about how her career has evolved, common consultation inquiries and solutions regarding private practice, health and wellness advocacy within physical therapy, and the importance of building a strong network of experts within your field. So a huge thanks to Lynn for taking the time out, coming on the podcast. And like I said, if in the future you see your role shifting from treating therapist to consultant, you're going to really love today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. I am coming to you live from the Private Practice Section annual meeting in Orlando, Florida, and I have the distinct honor and privilege to be sitting here with Lynn Steffes, and I know I have a lot of questions for her, and we're going to get to a lot. But first, Lynn, can you just give the listeners a little bit more about where you are now with your business and what you're doing?
So thank you so much for having me, Karen. This is really fun. And it's especially fun because it's absolutely gorgeous out.
I know, we're sitting outside.
And we have, I know, I'm from Milwaukee, and we have 6 inches of snow on the ground. So I am loving this. But awesome opportunity to communicate with a lot of PTs. So I feel like I kind of do a variety of things, but I have a singular mission and vision for that which I do. And it's all really surrounding the promotion of physical therapy as an important healthcare provider and service, not only in rehabilitation and healing of people, but actually in lifestyle medicine, being healthy. You have a dentist, you have a doctor, or you have maybe an accountant or a massage therapist. Well, you need a PT, and that's kind of me. So I promote physical therapy to all kinds of people. I teach at the university level, which I love. I speak all over the country, so I've had the privilege of speaking in 43 states, believe it or not. I do a lot of webinars, I do a lot of consulting, and I work with practices as small as a guy and his mom does the billing when she feels like it, and I, by the way, don't recommend that. And then I also work with systems as large as Mayo Clinic. So I have kind of a variety.
And obviously, when you graduated from physical therapy school, you were treating patients. And I know a lot of listeners here that are physical therapists. They graduate from PT school, they're seeing patients, and oftentimes, I know this is the way I felt when I graduated, is, well, this is what I'm just going to be doing. I'm going to be treating patients until I retire. I didn't have the foresight, I didn't have the knowledge to say, wait, there are other things I can do. So how did you go from treating patients to where you are now, and at what point in your career did that shift happen?
Wow, I wish I had some big strategic plan to share with you, that I had like this vision, but I really didn't. When I graduated, I really did pediatric physical therapy. I graduated, worked for a private practice, and I worked as a contract therapist in a school district, and then moved on to a rehab facility, and then opened outpatient pediatric clinics in a couple states. And I loved being a therapist. I always say, I could still be a physical therapist if anyone would take me, but it's been a while. But as I was treating, I started seeing all these opportunities for physical therapy and kind of just getting more and more experience, opening businesses. So I and it was weird because I actually worked in a private practice, and I loved treating people, and I loved managing. I loved really everything I was doing, but there was just a lot of it, and I think I started developing a little bit of an entrepreneurial, just like the sense that maybe I wanted to do some stuff on my own. So I actually left the practice and interviewed with someone to become a pool therapist, and it was a PT I knew. And after I got done talking about everything I'd done, she was like, "Wow, Lynn," she's like, I can definitely sell you as a pool therapist, but I'd love to sell you as a consultant." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is there any reason I can't sell myself as a consultant?" And she said, "Absolutely not." And that was kind of like this big aha moment for me. And I actually thought I would just like do a little bit of consulting until I found someplace I wanted to work. And then I'd just take a job. I always assumed I wanted a job. And so I started consulting, and it kind of became quickly a multiplier. And then I started thinking, well, I got to look for a job. And I said to my husband, well, I got to start looking for a job. And he said, "I'm pretty sure you have a job, and it's consulting." And it's so funny because that was a long time ago, over 20 years ago. And I still love it, And
isn't it amazing that so often it takes that person outside of ourselves, even maybe outside your family or even personal friend group, to say, "What are you doing? Like, you can do this." So what's interesting is you needed that person to give you the push, and now in your work, you're giving other people the push.
I feel super excited when I meet clinicians, and some of them are very young, and some are also people who are kind of getting to a point in their career where they're looking for something else. I feel super excited when they want to do consulting. Number one, I think there's so much work to be done, and I don't feel like a sense of competition. I'm just like thrilled that people are getting into promoting what we do and being a multiplier. I think of a consultant as a multiplier. I think, like, if a practice comes to me and they wanted to start, for example, a running program. Oh my God, I've already worked with 7 practices that have started running programs. Somebody comes to me and they want to revise their compensation plan. I can, it's like I kind of become a repository for everybody's experience. I always say I'm a kid in a candy store, and as I travel, I gather up wonderful people and just a lot of cool stuff that people do.
And so what would you say are the people coming to you for your work as a consultant? What are the most common things that you're seeing that people are like, "Hey, we really need help with this"?
Well, I feel like everybody needs help with revenue. And so anything to do with marketing promotion. They need help with payer contracting and dealing with third-party payers who seem to want to put up roadblocks all the time. And I just have a unique, perspective on that. And I've worked with third-party payers, and I feel like I just am marketing to third-party payers. I feel like people come when they look at, how are we going to grow? And how we're going to grow in the revenue. And I tap them on the shoulder also and go, hey, you got to look at your expenses too. I feel like that's a big thing. I also think compliance. I think we're so burdened. And so I try to work with people on what they need to do, but I do it in a different way than a lot of people. I think a lot of people are like into what I call the scary compliance, like, oh, you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And I do mention that, but I also look at people and I say, you know what? You need to communicate your value in a better way. And if we did that, we'd be in better shape. So that's kind of a variety. Starting cash programs is super fun.
And do you mean cash programs within a traditional therapy clinic? So for people listening, there are traditional clinics, I guess we can categorize them as such, they take your insurance. So if you call up a clinic and you say, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, do they take it? Yes, great. So when you say you help with cash programs, is that within a traditional clinic or within like an out-of-network, or do you help establish a cash practice for someone?
Both. So
Cool.
I feel like there are people who they're excellent young therapists, consultants who have developed cash-based programs and who that's all they really talk about. And so I definitely work with a lot of hybrid practices. So practices that have one foot on the dock where, the third-party payment environment is, and one foot in cash-based, and they're developing other programs. Sometimes I'm working with people that are all cash. Sometimes I refer them to people that are focused on all cash. I also think, I think we've kind of only just begun in the services we're providing. That which is third-party payer covered is so limited for PT, and there's so much we can do if we just are willing to collect money.
Yeah. Well, and I think in a traditional therapy setting, I think because physical therapy is always associated with the healthcare system, with the physician, we used to always need a physician referral. So people, the public's expectation is we take insurance, because no one would ever go to a massage therapist, a personal trainer, Pilates or yoga and expect them to be covered by their insurance.
I completely agree, but I have this thought. First of all, I'm just going to say out loud, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but I don't like dentists because I just don't like people messing around in my mouth. But I think dentists have figured it out.
Oh, they have 100% figured it out.
I feel like physical therapy as a profession has to grow up to be more like the dental profession. I mean, 100 years ago, dentists, basically, you saw them when you had to have a tooth knocked out. And they were kind of that provider of last resort. They really were a last resort kind of provider. And they have evolved to being an amazing healthcare provider. They do prevention. They do treatment. Yep. They have specialties. Yep. They do cosmetics. They do performance. So there's so many things that are parallel. And I don't know about you, but when I go to the dentist, when I walk in to have something done, they tell me, well, this is what your insurance covers and this is cash.
Yeah, and I don't have any dental coverage, but guess what I still do every year? I go to the dentist.
Exactly. And PT, so some of it is the consumer mentality. Like, I paid a premium, premium should cover PT. I don't doubt that. But a lot of people have dental insurance and they still pay for other things. I think some of it is us. It's a mindset shift that we have to have. We have to say, this is what your plan covers, and these are other services that would benefit you that we recommend. So a lot of times when I'm promoting a program, like, for example, the annual PT physical, or I'm very interested in lifestyle medicine and brain health and the kind of things, people go, well, which insurances cover it? And it's like, okay, that shouldn't be your first question. Your first question should be, would this bring value to my patients and my community? And if it does, is there something that's paid? That's an appropriate question, but not like who's going to cover it and if it's not covered. So some of the mentality shift is our own paradigm. So
yeah, and I think there does need to be that shift of this is my expertise. This is what I offer. Looking around in my community, would they benefit from XYZ program, a program on brain health, which I know you have, right? So is this something my community would like? because it's not about us. We have to be worried about the end user, which is our client, our patient, however you want to, whatever kind of word you want to put for them. But I do think that from a profession-wide standpoint, that needs to shift. And I think if it can shift, I think you're right. You'd be seeing a lot more hybrid practices where, yeah, maybe you take insurance, but you have a brain health, you have a vestibular program, you have a wellness program. I think that can happen.
And I think that's where, I totally think there's 100% place for all cash and all third party. But I think if we all kind of went in with more of a hybrid idea, we would be able to leverage what insurance pays for our patients. And honestly, a lot of people don't want to do insurance because they say, well, it limits the number of visits. Well, guess what? If it limits the number of visits, you still can do cash outside of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, why can't we see that? And so it's interesting that I study like dental marketing and dental operations as a way of just having insight into a different provider, even though they're not my favorite healthcare provider. So.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And what advice would you have for someone listening who maybe wants to start shifting their practice, going from being a treating, I almost said physician, from being a treating physical therapist or physician or nurse practitioner or even a dentist? So how could they go from a full-time treatment to consulting? Like, do you have to take extra classes? Do you need certifications? Do you all that kind of real practical stuff?
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Net Health, and be right back with Lynn's answer. Are you interested in a free opportunity to check in with the latest thoughts of other rehab leaders? Well, I've got one for you. There's a new online rehab therapy community designed for the intersection of the clinical and business sides of rehab. It's the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forum. Catchy name, right? It's all about habits and initiatives that juice up your attendance, revenue, workflows, documentation, compliance, efficiency, and engagement, while allowing your provider teams to keep their eye on the prize, their patients and outcomes. I personally believe that a better connected rehab therapy profession has the power to help more people. Jump in, subscribe, and join the conversation today. You can find the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forum at www.nethealth.com/healthy.
All right. It's a really good question. Well, I think first it's a self-examination of like, what are you good at, passionate about, interested in, and a willingness to share. And when I first became a consultant, I thought I had to know everything, and I just realized I just have to know enough, and I have to ask you questions so that I can learn what you need and then partner with you to create that to happen. So as a consultant, I did go take additional courses. I took courses through the Small Business Administration, through our local college. We have a local women's college that has a business, an evening business series. I did some of that. I talked to other consultants, and actually I find that sometimes people come to me and they'll say they want to be a consultant, and then I'll have a conversation with them, and I'm kind of like, okay, there's a couple things you need to do, and you need to listen. I feel like that's hard. I think some people think they just want to tell people what to do, but you kind of got to listen to what they want and be able to do some diagnostics. I think getting hands-on experience. As much book knowledge and classes as you take and all of that, unless you can relate to somebody's problems and say, yeah, I was kind of bad at that and I learned how to do it, or this is where I was and here are the steps. I just feel like that would be a struggle. So I think getting hands-on experience, if you're working in a facility or a practice, hey, volunteer to run a project, get on a committee, take the lead, ask to be involved in interviews, ask to be the marketing person, ask to work with your billing and payment. Get involved in the association, because I've gotten a ton of contacts. And I also I always say it, if I'm the smartest person I talk to all day, that's not good. So I know so many people that are so smart, and I feel like I can pick up the phone and call them. So they're multipliers for what I'm able to help people with. So I think there are steps, and a big thing is hands-on, firsthand experience. Another thing is go take some extra classes, do some reading. but work with experienced people and kind of stick your neck out. I've been consulting for over 20 years, and people will call me and say, hey, Lynn, I got this project. Do you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do, but I haven't done it before, but it sounds like fun. And if I'm in too deep, I just call people.
Yeah, that's great. So kind of look for those mentors or friends or, like you said, colleagues, people we're here at PPS, so it might be people at PPS, it might be your neighbor, it might be, I always say too, like, don't overlook your family and your friends, because there's a wealth of knowledge there as well. I always tend to look out and I'm like, oh, what about the person right in front of me who knows how to do XYZ? Why am I not asking them?
Well, it's funny because I was working with a practice that wanted to work with more personal injury attorneys and those kinds of patients. That was something they were interested in doing. And a very skilled practitioner in working on spine and cervical issues. I thought, this is a good fit. And he's like, I just don't know how to do it. And so I was like, okay, I know of someone who knows an injury attorney who I respected. And I just contacted her and I paid her for a couple hours. And I interviewed her and spent time with her just going through, like, what did you want? What's important? All that kind of stuff. What about communications? What would discourage you from using a provider? How do you decide who's a preferred? And it was weird because as soon as the interview was done, it wasn't cheap, but it was so worth it. And she kind of said to me, she goes, I need some good PTs. The more I ask, the more I talk to you, the more I realize, like, I know what I need and I don't know if I know who it is. And so it's funny that, there are a lot of resources out there.
And so from what I'm hearing is, 1, don't be shy.
Can't be shy.
Don't be shy. 2, don't worry if you don't know everything right now, because you can learn it in a short amount of time. And I love and this sounds so crazy coming from me as I'm interviewing you, but I love the idea of interviewing people. But I don't know why I never even thought of that before, to say, well, I don't really know this, but I know this person does, so let's have a formal interview, not just like a 1 or 2 emails, but really like you said, take the time, pay for the time if you need to, so that you can really understand what that person needs to help your upcoming client. Like, I guess you can always do the research. So we don't just have to stick to things that we think we know. We can expand.
Well, and I think as a PT, I remember as a young PT, I had a patient once that had a child, because I was a PT, that had osteogenesis imperfecta, and I'd never seen it before. I was getting a referral for it, and I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. So I just went on the web and looked for a PT that treated that. I found someone out at NIH, National Institute of Health. I sent her an email and we set up a call and I went through everything. She sent me her protocols. It was and I just realized PTs are such incredibly generous people. A lot of people are generous.
Yeah.
PTs are exceptionally generous.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And that kind of taught me, hey, don't be afraid to admit you don't know. I have worked with or had exposure to people who have worked with consultants who are kind of know-it-alls. And at some level, people are like, oh, really excited about them. But it doesn't create long-term relationships if you don't say, hey, that's a good question. Let's figure it out. So I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I sure love the questions,
I love that. Love it. That should be like my motto for life. I don't really have any answers, but I love to ask the questions.
You have lots of answers, Karen. You're awesome.
But I think what I think struck me from what you just said is that we can use our skills as physical therapists. We know how to research. We know how to look up diagnoses and treatments and protocols. So we can take those skills and transfer them into consultancy skills.
Oh my God.
Right.
So what I have as a process when I work with practices, I call differential diagnosis for your practice. And I basically do diagnostics, and then I have a hypothesis, and then I write a plan, and then I work on implementing the plan, and then we stop and measure, and we figure out what's working and what isn't. And of course there are plans, just like there are if you treat a lot of knees, you have certain plans you use that usually work. And so over time you kind of accumulate solutions. But I still customize. I think some people like the canned solutions, and it probably is more cost effective, but I still like working one-on-one.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is great. Thank you so much. I'm like learning so much here. Now, what do you have? It seems like your career keeps evolving. Do you have anything coming up that's kind of different than what you're doing now?
That's a really good question.
Or is it under wraps, which is also fun.
No. So first, I'm kind of an open book. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this stuff. But so I have a really big birthday coming next week, and I don't need to share the number, but it's a pretty big one. And a lot of my friends are retiring, and I'm always kind of like, what am I going to do next? I'm still, I don't know, it's just the way I am. But I have been working in the area of brain health for a while, and I have a signature turnkey brain health program. And I have one thing I want to do with that program, and that is to very specifically, instead of just going into the PT market with it, I want to actually start approaching active senior centers and working with their activity people and their exercise and fitness people, because I think the active senior centers have all the tools, they have all the mechanism, they have this captive audience, but they don't connect the dots, which is how cognition and wellness fit. So that's something fun I want to do with Brainiacs. And then the other thing is I really want to continue to push lifestyle medicine and PT. And I want to connect with other like-minded PTs. There's a young PT that's just starting out. I want to mentor her. She is very interested in lifestyle medicine and exercise and how it relates specifically to anxiety and depression. I feel like we have so many opportunities we haven't even tried to do. And so this year I came out early to go to Lifestyle Medicine Conference.
Which was
early. Yeah, it was on the front end. So how perfect. But next year I want to be talking at it.
Perfect. We'll get that pitch in there and talk at it. That's awesome. And I have one more question that I ask everyone, but before we get to that, I just want to, if you can talk a little bit more about just the basics or the foundations of the Brainiacs program, just because you mentioned it, and I just want people to understand what that is.
Sure. So I have always, as a peds therapist and adult neurotherapist, I've always been into brain neurology and the flexibility and the adaptability and really the plasticity of the human brain. And I've seen back in the day when we didn't think anything could change after childhood, I saw it could. And so I was always kind of like, we don't know everything. And now we know much more. But unfortunately, my parents both passed from Alzheimer's disease. And so when that happens, when you have two parents diagnosed, it kind of scares you. And so I started doing research on brain health and what the literature showed. And it's very clear that, prevention, mitigation, and cognitive fitness and health is not just a learning and study and, read a book, do a Sudoku. It really is a physiological thing. And exercise probably has the strongest evidence. And so I started a turnkey program, and with the basis of it, EX being exercise and prescribed exercise at a certain level. A walk around the block is nice, but it doesn't really do the whole job. And so how to prescribe and train someone to, exercise at a proper level. And then I also added health and wellness education that's evidence-based to it. So nutrition, sleep hygiene, stress management, activity management, socialization. And so PTs, we're constantly doing patient education. We're perfectly suited to do it.
100%.
And instead of having people come and sit in a class, I'm like, okay, let's work out and teach.
Perfect.
And so it's been pretty fun. I have clinics in 13 states doing it now.
That's awesome.
Which I love. Yeah.
That's awesome. And we'll have a link to that on the website at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com if people want to find out more information, because people aren't getting any younger in this country, and so it's really important. And you're right, PTs I think are ideally positioned to be the ones to work with that population. So excellent program. Now, the question that I ask everyone, this is the last question. I probably should have prefaced this to you beforehand, but knowing where you are now in your business and in your life, what advice would you give to yourself as a new grad out of PT school?
Wow. That is such a good question. It's weird because I don't think my expectations were high enough as a new grad.
I get that.
And I think similar to what you said, that everybody graduates from PT school and you kind of think you're going to be a PT. And and I love being a PT, and PT is such an incredible profession, but I never dreamed I would be traveling across the country, writing chapters to books, developing my own programs, having an opportunity to speak in front of hundreds of PTs, teaching at the university. I never thought of all the possibilities. So I guess as a PT, I would say, like, open your eyes and look not only for what you can do one-on-one with patients, which is incredibly important, but look for opportunities that multiply our profession. And I think I would have told myself earlier on, like, I feel like I started early doing it, but I still think I could have even had the vision earlier.
Yeah.
And, and just ask people for help. I love it when people come to me and say, this is something I want to do. Will you help me? I feel like it's an honor,
Great advice. So great advice for all those students in school and just graduating from PT school or really any program. So thanks so much. Where can people find you?
So I have a website, www.steffes.And and I also have a website for my brain health program, www.brainex.com. And you can always find me at all the meetings at the.
That's very true.
It's really true.
Very true. So, Lynn, thank you so much. And just so everyone knows, we'll have links to everything in the show notes under this for this podcast on the website podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. So, Lynn, thank you so much for taking the time out at PPS and enjoying sitting outside in Orlando before both of us have to go back to our cold places. At least New York doesn't have snow yet.
Yeah, we have snow. Hopefully it'll melt. And thank you, Karen. You do a great job of, I think, sharing a lot of good information and talking to people who are thought leaders and people who have different ideas. And I think that's pretty important.
Well, thank you so much. And everyone listening, thanks so much for listening. Have a great couple of days and stay healthy, wealthy, and smart.
Well, a huge thank you to Dr. Lynn Steffes for a great conversation on being a consultant and making that transition from full-time therapist to consultant. So thank you so much. And of course, a big thank you to Net Health for sponsoring today's episode. So again, if you want to be part of a free online community, the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forum, where you will see stats on the community members already involved, plus polls, write-ups, white papers, surveys, benchmarking calculators, videos, podcasts, and more, then join the community. I personally believe that a better connected rehab therapy profession has the power to help more people. So jump in, subscribe, and join the conversations today. You can find the Rehab Therapy Operational Best Practices Forum at www.nethealth.com/healthy.
Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the podcast at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media.